All right, noticing the time and the presence of quorum of the Select Board, we will re-enter into public session. The August 22nd, 2022 Select Board meeting. We'll start out as we usually do with residents' concerns. Do we have anyone who would like to come forward with any concerns that are not on the agenda?
Jim Wood, Redwood Road. At the Select Board meeting on August 8th, it was proposed to delegate organizing police details at polling stations from the Select Board to what had been the practice until very recently, that is, to the Chief of Police working with the town clerk. In the discussion that ensued, one member of the board made several statements about police presence at polling places that deserve comment. Quote, "Having police outside of polling stations for some people could make them feel a little bit more unsafe." Quote, "The police could be stationed a little bit further back from the exact entrance of the polling place, so it's not like an armed presence." Quote, "Anecdotally, I haven't heard this from many people, but especially people from immigrant families, people who have recently come here, do feel a little bit uncertain with police presence. I respectfully ask if any other Select Board member has heard these concerns expressed by any Acton voter. The comments are at best naive and at worst foolhardy. Recently, there was a violent confrontation between protesters at, of all places, the Discovery Museum, which resulted in multiple felony charges. Nationally, there's an uptick of threats against election officials and law enforcement officers from local police to the FBI. It therefore seems remarkably ill-timed to propose micromanaging the town clerk and police chief in the organizing of a police detail at election sites, particularly the suggestion that officers be moved further away. The current law, Chapter 54, Section 72, which is titled Preservation of Order by Police, states quite unambiguously that the purpose of a police detail shall be to preserve order and protect the election officers and supervisors from any interference with their duties and to aid in enforcing the laws relating to elections. How would that be done if the officers are moved further away? In fact, the law, Chapter 54, Section 66, requires the presence of an officer or constable inside the polling place to secure the ballot boxes. How could she or he be moved further away? I have been voting in Massachusetts for 46 years and in Acton for 34. I have personally found the police presence at polling places both appropriate and reassuring. It seems to me that the Acton police and election officials deserve our gratitude and, yes, our respect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie Cadillac, Port Revere Road. A couple of meetings ago, I made some comments about the report on the DEIC by the women's group, and Mr. Martin subsequently corrected me. Well, I am not going to repeat the whole thing except for one particular issue where I said that the change in title from diversity officer to anything else was prompted by concerns by several people that the word officer was inappropriate, and to read the exact words several expressions of concern about including the term officer in the title due to connotations of policing. Policing has to do with police, Mr. Martin. So it concerns me that this change was made immediately by the people running this interview without any questions, without any discussion of pros and cons. Basically, that's another evidence that this group was biased, as is the rest of the DEI enterprise, and there will be more of this unless we stop it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. I will take your attention on a issue that is global, problem of genocide. So my name is Vandana Sharma, and I live in Acton, Massachusetts. War crimes, if left unrecognized and unpunished, only lead to more aggression and suffering. There is no better time to reiterate that than today. As we see millions of people, women and children face death and destitution. Today, I get up to commemorate the genocide of 2.8 million Hindus by Pakistani army and allied Islamists in Bangladesh 51 years ago. Bangladesh was known as East Pakistan back then. Senator Ted Kennedy, one of the most illustrious sons of our great state, and a senator who represented us for 47 years, wrote in U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee 51 years ago, quote, "Field reports to the U.S. government, countless eyewitnesses, journalistic accounts, reports of international agencies such as World Bank, and additional information available to the subcommittee document that the reign of terror that grips East Pakistan. The hardest hit have been the members of Hindu community who have been robbed of their lands and their shops and systematically slaughtered, and in some places painted with the yellow patch marked as H for Hindu. I request this gathering to remember the victims of this forgotten genocide on the 51st year since this tragedy. I'll be happy to share a detailed resolution by email on this important event to our fellow attendees. Thank you for your time and listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And certainly I would appreciate if you have additional information, if you could send that along, that would be great. Thank you. Do we have anyone in online? Okay. Therefore, we'll move ahead. Mr. Manager, your update.
Thank you. A few items. If you've driven or walked down Main Street, you've noticed the fence that we put up in front of the Kennedy landscaping property. This is to secure the site. Kennedy Landscaping finally vacated the property last week, and so staff have been working to make sure the property is secured, and we're getting ready for the Acton Housing Authority and their project, which is still seeking funding, but it will eventually be a new 40-plus unit senior affordable housing facility right on that location. So if you see the fence there, that's why it's there. Further down Main Street, Kelly's Corner, we are hosting a block party on September 10th to kick off the construction project and celebrate the area, try to promote some of the businesses that are there. This is an effort initiated by our Economic Development Office and many other community partners. We encourage you to go down there. I believe it's in the afternoon on September 10th, but there's a lot of information about it on our website and social media, so check it out. Mass DOT, who is running the Kelly's Corner infrastructure project, is actually scheduling a construction kickoff meeting with our staff next week. So it's happening. And as we meet with the contractor, we'll learn more about the schedule they're proposing and how it will impact traffic and all the various other things that we'll be communicating to the public over the next few years during that exciting major infrastructure project. Another project I wanted to update folks on, actually staying in that area, Kelly's Corner. If you happen to go to Dunkin' Donuts today, you may have seen our local, or our artist, our muralist, Meg Nichols, who was one of the grantees in our public art program, and she designed a very cool Acton mural that will be going on that blank wall that's on the end of the Eden's building where Not Your Average Joe's is, and there's a package store. That blank wall right there is going to have a beautiful mural on it. This is a project that we received funding from the state to do some public art grants, and this is one of the 4 projects that has been awarded. So, and she's actually looking for help, so if you want to do some painting, you probably can't do the intricate stuff, I'm sure she'll do that, but if you want to do some background, she's looking for help. I think Wednesday and Thursday of this week, contact the town manager's office for more information, but it's very exciting. And then finally, I just wanted to, actually Gardner Field, at the last meeting, a member of the public asked for an update on Gardner Field, and I have been working on that project since that time with our Recreation Department and our Public Works Department. Additional staff resources have been allocated to support this project and ensure that it is successful. There's been some significant redesign work that is necessary due to some of the challenges we've encountered with the site. We're working closely with the Friends of Gardner Field and the local business community, and we'll hope to continue to have an update for the community on the playground, but it will not be completed this summer as we had hoped, and I will provide additional updates this fall as we sort out exactly the final schedule. Finally, item 6 on the agenda tonight relating to sewer O&M rates. We need to take a second look at what we're proposing, so I'd ask that it be continued to the next meeting. So if anybody's here for that, I just wanted to mention that now, because I'm asking the board not to discuss it tonight.
Thank you. One question. Are there, could you give me an update on any plans, if there are any, about observation for 9/11? Yes, the committee of folks in public safety and the community that work on that event every year is working on an event for that morning or for that day, and we will be publicizing information within the next week or so on the details. But it'll be typical. Last year was a 20th remembrance, and so it'll be more typically like the ones we've had in the previous few years. Thank you. Okay, comments from members. Jim.
Sure, I had a couple things. First of all, so Mr. Wood started out with a comment and ended it with, I thought, a good note, which was, let's be respectful. And that's the part I agree with. The part I found disrespectful was that you called one of my fellow board members naive and foolhardy. And I think that was not appropriate and not respectful. So please watch out for that. Thank you. The other note was, with my sustainability hat on, a lot of the news in the last couple of weeks has been about federal and state climate legislation. And just really pleased that we will be able to go ahead and apply for one of the slots, one of the 10 slots that's called out in the state climate legislation that will allow up to 10 cities and towns to be part of a pilot project to ban, within some limits, the use of fossil fuel infrastructure in new construction and major rehab. And this is consistent with the bylaw that town meeting passed that did precisely that. That particular bylaw is not in effect yet because we need an actual act of the legislature to allow us to do that. But this is a very close second, and I'm really glad that we're proceeding with that. I appreciated seeing our little application in the packet for the consent calendar, and I'm really glad we're finding a way to make progress on this. That's it. Thanks.
Fran.
I too wanted to speak to the comments regarding our vote at the last select board meeting. I'm always appreciative for another perspective that I might not think of, and Himija has perspectives that I respect, and I enjoy working with her on this board, and she has very, very great insight.
Thank you. Himija.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really upset right now. Being a note taker is at sometimes really fun, sometimes really disappointing. This is one of the most disappointing times. Being a young member on the select board is difficult. To be called naive and foolhardy is extremely difficult. I don't appreciate that. I speak when I do, because I do have some knowledge, I do have some perspectives, and I share that willingly. And I'm looking at you right now, and that's something you didn't even give me the respect for. You didn't even look me in the eyes when you were saying all those things. You made contact with every other member of this board, but you didn't look at my eyes when you were speaking, and that's not okay. At the end of the day, I speak because I have a unique perspective as a young woman of color coming from an immigrant family, and so I appreciate the fact that you have been able to have police presence and not worry about that for the majority of your life. I can't say that that has been the situation for me 100%, and I know that it's been a lot worse for my other friends of color. And so for you to disregard that is extremely disheartening. I do think that at the end of the day, we made a select board vote. The majority voted in favor, and so this is not just me speaking for the board, it's the board voting on this. And that's how we make all our decisions here, is we respect each other's opinions and we vote by majority. So I'll end it there. I do think this warrants further discussion. I'm happy to have those discussions. I do feel disheartened by what had happened, but I also want to end with, I respect your opinion, and you as a resident of Acton have the right to say what you believe in. That's completely your right. So I will end it there, but I actually did have an update on my end. So we are making some progress with Indigenous Peoples Day for October. So I have been working with one of our local historians who researches Indigenous history. We're in contact with the library, so hopefully in September for one of our select board meetings, we have a little bit more information to give on that, some updates on the programming that we're hoping to do to honor that, and also the proclamation that will have been reviewed both by our local historian, but also members of our Indigenous community as well, which we're really grateful for their time to help us write a proclamation that honors their voice and perspectives. Thanks.
Okay, and nothing from me either, except to acknowledge that three of us were at the ribbon cutting for Borges Martial Arts over on Great Road. They had an opening in their new facility. I believe they've already been in town in the past, and it was great to see them expanding into that space and not having another vacant storefront on Great Road. So it was a great event. Check out their website. Thank you. So we will move to the discussion of the West Acton Citizens Library, vacant position. It's a legal notice, which I need to read. Notice is hereby given under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11, that the Select Board and the remaining West Acton Citizens Library trustees will hold a public hearing on August 22nd, 2022 at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, room 204, Acton Town Hall, and remotely by video conference, and call in to fill the open trustee position. The board will interview those people that wish to serve as trustee until the 2023 annual town elections. From a computer, please click on the link to join the public meeting, actonma.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. So as I think everyone knows, we have a vacant position in the West Acton Citizens Library for trustee to fill an unexpired term. This position would be from starting tonight until the annual town meeting, which I believe is May 16th, 2023. The procedure for carrying this out will be very similar to what was done several years ago when there was another vacant position. And I did send out a checklist on how we're going to proceed with this. We're going to, candidates who have submitted letters of interest to the position will be given time to present their qualifications. Candidates shall be interviewed in random order. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes to introduce themselves. During that time, the candidate should discuss their qualifications, any prior library experience, how they assist the library in the transition with new staff, and any ideas they have about improving the library experience for the public. Members of both the Select Board and the West Acton Citizens Library trustees will be given an opportunity to ask questions of the candidates, starting with questions from the trustees. After the boards have asked questions, comments and questions from the public will be accepted with a time limit of 2 minutes per public comment. Same procedure will follow for subsequent candidates. At this point, the public comment period will be closed. The combined boards will deliberate. As chair, I will ask for nominations from the combined boards. The members of the boards will vote by roll call, with present WACL trustees voting first. Simple majority of the combined boards is required. In case there's a tie, there will be a runoff election. Candidates with the highest vote counts. Person with the final highest vote count will be appointed interim trustee. We just need a simple majority. So, I've been informed that one of the individuals who was interested in the position has withdrawn. So instead of having 4 candidates to interview, we have 3.
Mr. Chair, I think 2 candidates have withdrawn.
Okay. It's the latest update. So,
Yeah.
so who do we have?
So I think Ann Gannon and Susie Alex withdrew.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So,
Okay.
go ahead.
Within the last hour, we received notice that the second candidate withdrew, Susie Alex. And earlier today, we received, or about a few hours earlier today, we received notice that one of the other candidates withdrew,
Ann
Ann
Glennon.
Glennon. And so there are 2 remaining.
Thank you. So I guess the easiest thing, if anybody has a coin to flip.
Coins? I remember coins.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Are you going to invite the WACO, existing WACO trustees up to the table, or how are we doing that?
Yeah, I think that would be fine. We've got 2 seats right up here for the trustees. You come
Here.
right over here.
Over here, up here with the grown-ups.
Pardon me? Yes. So just to formalize this, we do need to call the meeting to order for the combined boards. I have a motion from someone on the select board to call this meeting to order.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of meeting in combined session, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We are in session. Since nobody up here seems to have a coin that we can
Look, I
flip.
found some.
Oh, you found one, okay. So, all right,
So it seems like we have 2 candidates.
We do.
We have Annette and we have Linda, right?
yes.
Yes. So let's say heads is Linda. Heads it is.
Linda Dempster. You're present?
Hmm. Oh, okay.
We need to have them call their meeting to order.
Okay.
I call this meeting to order of the trustees of West Acton Library, Citizens Library. Okay?
Thank you. Glad people are keeping me honest here. All right. Linda Dempster, do we have anybody online? Nope. All right then. Tails. Annette, please. Please come up and describe why you should make an excellent trustee for the next few months.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Annette Lockery. I live at 57 Windsor Avenue. I've lived a few houses down from the library for a number of years. Before moving to Acton, I had a job with the federal government where I oversaw multi-million-dollar federal contracts all over New England with physician organizations. I oversaw a staff of 15 people, and again, we covered all of New England. I left that job to come to Acton and start raising my family. But even before closing with our house, I walked down the street and saw Citizens Library and of course went in. As most people have the experience of, as soon as I walked in, I was immediately drawn to the location. It's warm and comfortable, and at that time and every time since then, going into that library feels like coming home. In very short order after moving here, I found myself in a position of spearheading an endeavor to defend the Citizens Library against a town warrant, which, if passed, would have closed the library. It would have ended its long life as a library. With the help and support of the librarian and the trustees, a small group of us created and distributed a flyer all over the town of Acton, urging people to come to the town meeting and explaining what was going on about the possible closure of Citizens Library. Fortunately, that worked. Enough people saw it and came to the meeting and voted against the warrant, and Citizens Library continued to be funded. It was a very, very heartening experience. A good friend of mine began her long political career in Acton based upon coming to help me with that endeavor. As a result of a successful summer reading program I ran at Citizens Library, after that, I created the Taught Time program, which I ran at Citizens Library every Monday for 22 years until COVID struck. There were morning classes for 2- and 3-year-olds and afternoon classes for 4- and 5-year-olds. In the morning, they came with an adult. In the afternoon, it was often the 4- and 5-year-old children's first experience without their parents. It was fun. There was always a craft involved, and of course, at the end of every class, I encouraged people to take out books. I particularly liked it when they took out about 15 at a time, which is what I always used to do when we took out books for my children. Again, at the end of each class, I checked out books. So I was very comfortable with the procedure on how to check out books, how to log books, how to shelf books, the whole book situation. A number of years later, at a special anniversary section, a party run by the Citizens Library Trustees, I was commended by the trustees for having the most successful program that Citizens Library ever had, the Taught Time program. It helped because not only did it increase the circulation and the book count, but it also increased the patronage. Many of the parents or grandparents who brought their children kept staying at Citizens Library because they loved it, even after the kids went off to school. At the same time as running the Taught Time program for the past 15 years, I began selling promotional products in West Acton Village, thereby becoming very involved with the West Acton Village Merchants Association, also known as WAVMA. As a current member of the WAVMA board, I've become the face of the organization. I'm the secretary clerk. I handle all correspondence and outreach with the community. The organization, I'm happy to say, has grown to more than 40 businesses in the village. And I'm happy to say I personally recruited Citizens Library to become a member of WAVMA. In this WAVMA role, I have helped to organize and run several major big events within the village. The Spring Fling, the Holiday Stroll, and of course, the hugely popular Oktoberfest. The Oktoberfest involved me writing to and soliciting hundreds of different people and organizations, getting their money, assigning them spaces, figuring out the layout on the field, helping people get onto the field, and making sure everybody was happy. Our Oktoberfests were very, very successful, and they were great community events. We really lucked out because there was sunshine, blue sky days, all of them. Based upon my event planning and organization experience, all of these endeavors within West Acton Village have been planned down to the smallest detail to not only bring people into the village, but also expose them to each and every one of the businesses within the village. Realtors have a saying that there's 3 important variables for success in real estate: location, location, location. With me, what I do, I sell promotional products. And for me, the 3 variables are exposure, exposure, exposure. And that's successful when I'm helping people market their business. And it's also successful when I'm helping my organization, WAVMA, to bring people into the village and get business from people coming into the community. And that's what I think also would happen with Citizens Library. The Citizens Library really can use the experience that I have to bring exposure and bring people in more and more. With my husband Blake as an English teacher at AB for many years, and me on the other end of kids' lives with the Taught Time program, we like to think that together we had at least some influence in encouraging many, many Acton students to read and enjoy books. All of the foregoing is by way of saying that I love and care about the Citizens Library and the viability of the library down the road. Furthermore, I appreciate and wholeheartedly support the undertaking of the town, along with the support of the Memorial Library to assure its viability. If I'm honored to become a trustee, I will bring to my position my management, financial, event planning, and administrative business skills in helping to assure the ongoing viability of Citizens Library. I would also help to create and implement additional outreach programs which would bring both families, organizations, and individuals to the library. Some ideas I had: Santa Claus. When I was running Talk Time, I posted in regional, the Acton, what was it called? Action Unlimited. People came from all over to Citizens Library to see Santa. I did it not just for Talk Time, but to bring people into the library. There was a Halloween party that was started at Citizens Library. The librarian who recently left had an idea to have a Halloween storyteller come. What she was doing was looking around to rent a spot somewhere outside of the library to have it. I urged her to have it at the library in the backyard. With some reluctance, she agreed to do that, and it was hugely successful. People came to the library, they saw the library, and that was run for several years in a row outside in the backyard. And it was really cool. The kids loved being outside in the dark for the storyteller. So I was glad to have that happen. Right now, we have people coming from the local co-op. They come over from the library. I would encourage people to come to the library from Gates and Douglas. I think it'd be great to have an outreach person to go visit Gates and Douglas, maybe go over and read to the younger kids. I think more frequent book sales would be a great outreach program. I would encourage the library to have tote bags, big tote bags that have Citizens Library on the side, so that when people take out books, particularly children who take out a lot of books, it would have the name of the library on it. I think a teddy bear's picnic in the yard would be fun. Have a little parade and all that. Similarly, a Halloween party where people could come in costume and walk around the village. I would have a reading contest with prizes. I know that always enticed my children to read more. I think a Where's Waldo game would be fun, an Acton-wide Where's Waldo game. It surprises me how many people don't know what Citizens Library is or where it is. A good friend of mine, a little more than 15 years ago, was a librarian, and she was the first person who thought to put a sign in front of the library. There's a sign on the building, but you have to really look for it to see it. The sign that she put up, of course, after lots of approval from all the beings, she put up a sign, and that really helped. So my Where's Waldo game, I think, would be a fun thing to do. I think having a book swap for kids, one for teens, another for adults, would be, again, another way to bring people into the library and expose them to Citizens Library. An author visit. Many years ago, we had authors come to the library, and it was great. You know, it's hard to find just the right person that will bring people in, but again, it brings Citizens Library exposure. One other one I had the idea of is a historical site scavenger hunt. Goodness knows we have enough around here we could do that. So those of us who love Citizens Library refer to it as a gem, because it really, really is. As part of my role, in addition to all the foregoing, as others have done many, many generations before me, I would work to sustain its unique charm and warmth and maintain its rightful place in the West Acton Village community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Questions of the candidate, and we'll start with the...
Can I sit down or stand up?
Might as well stay up.
Hi, Dr. Curtis, trustee. Hi, Ned.
Hi.
Thank you. Lots of great ideas.
Thank you.
But I do have a question. I know that you have voiced a strong preference for the Citizens Library to remain as an independent library. Do you still feel that that is feasible?
I support whatever's going to make the library the most viable. I think there are powers beyond me that maybe know better than I do, and whatever's going to make the library sustainable and live and thrive, I support. Thank you for the question.
And are you aware of the changes that have occurred already with our collaboration with
With
AML?
what? I'm sorry, with what?
With our collaboration with AML?
I'm sorry, with
Collaboration
collaboration, I'm sorry.
with AML.
I know just the ones that were mentioned at a presentation here, the other ones that I know of. Other than that, I don't know.
Do you want me to list them?
Okay,
Go ahead.
other questions from the trustees?
Hi, Net. Thank
Hi,
you.
Hi, Tara. Good to
Hi.
meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you, first of all, so much for applying to become a Board of Trustee. We appreciate it. And as you know, that's why we serve as well, because we do love this library for many, many reasons. I love the ideas that you had. I think they're really great. I agree with you. I remember when I first started in 2019, and I was looking back through some of my notes, and I remember when the Tot Time program was canceled due to low attendance. And I think there does need to be some changes. And that was prior to COVID. So we do need more TOTS programs. And unfortunately, COVID came right in and swooped through that. One of my questions for you is by viability, I would love to know how you would define that. What does viability look like to you? How is it measured? And your thoughts on that process?
I guess viability to me would be having the library be used.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's probably a lot of ways to measure viability. I don't know whether, I mean, I know sometimes libraries are measured based upon book counts and that kind of thing. I don't know how equitable that is or how appropriate it is, but I know that's one measure of success. But I mean, I think having it be used is I guess how I would consider it viable, that it's used and people come and enjoy it and there's enough to bring them into it, keeps it viable. I'm not explaining it very well, but.
No, it's kind of an off-the-cuff question just based on,
sure.
on the word being out there quite often, so that's why I was curious.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know how anything in terms of a library pays for itself, for example. But I think the intent is to have enough people come in, utilize the library, keep circulation up, enjoy the programs. All of that feeds into making it viable.
Right. Great, thank you. I appreciate that answer.
Sure.
My next question for you is, I'm very curious what your 3 key drivers were for running for the Board of Trustees. I know you've been very involved throughout Acton, and thank you for all of your service for all of those positions. But what now made you decide after running TOTS Time? And I'm not familiar with the TOTS Time program. Was it funded by the library? Was it a program where parents paid? Or how did that program work?
It was funded by the town.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I believe that's where my checks came from.
Okay, all right.
Originally, it was funded by funds that were raised by the auxiliary. But then the auxiliary ended. So the library was more comfortable not letting people pay for it. So I ended up getting paid by the library. And I think the mechanism was through the town. Or at least that's where my check came from.
Okay. So back to my question. So what were the 3 key drivers at this point now for you to decide to run for the Board of Trustees?
Citizens Library is clearly going through a big transition, and I think that's very exciting, and I'd like to be a part of that, to help in any way that I can. I think people can help even without being a trustee, but I would like to be a trustee if that's possible, to facilitate that process.
Okay.
Does that help?
3, sorry.
3? Okay.
Dig a little deeper.
How many was that?
That was 1.
That was 1. Okay. I guess another thing would be, because I would like to help. My way back background is in healthcare administration. I'm a nurse. So I think no matter what I do, my driving thing is I like to help people. And I think that's partly why I really loved the kids so much when I did talk time, because it was helping people. So even what I do now helps people. So I think I want to help. I think it could be it could be a tough situation, totally changing something and moving over to something else. So I wanted to help. And if I had to do it a third, does it have to be 3?
I would prefer it, but if there's a
Let me see,
third,
let
it's
me see if I
okay.
can
I don't
think
want to put you on the spot.
Let me see if I can think of one more. I think it'd be fun to be involved with some innovation that's going to be going on. I like being creative, and I think it'd be fun to help be creative in as many ways as possible to make things work for the library.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the questions.
Sorry, I thought it was done. I just wanted to know, Annette, did you participate in the survey that our board created through SurveyMonkey?
I don't remember.
regarding Citizens
I don't remember.
Library? It was very, very thorough survey, and many people had no clue the Citizens Library existed, and many people wanted more services and to be connected to AML and social media, and we changed all those things. But I just wondered if you were aware of what a high percent of people in town that did respond.
I'm not aware, I don't remember getting the survey, and I don't know the survey results. But thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Questions from members of the select board? Imager.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Tara and Dot, for your questions. We're really, really grateful for the work that you've done with our Citizens Library. And Annette, thank you so much for exactly like Tara and Dot said, for your services in the town. So my question is, in terms of just navigating and working with the team through, like you said, a difficult transition, but an exciting one in many ways, how would you make sure that you work together with your team? How do you prioritize teamwork and navigating disagreement to try to say your opinion and stand by your opinion, but also respect other people's opinions and the will of the majority of the board?
Well, clearly, if I were appointed a trustee, I would be the new kid on the block. And being the new kid on the block, I mean, my personality is such that I'm comfortable giving my opinion, but I also respect other people who have more experience. So I would learn from other people's experience, give my opinion, and go with the flow.
Thank you. And that's it for me. It was really great hearing about your passion, your ideas for the Citizens Library. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Imogen.
Jim.
Well, the first thing I want to say is also echo what Hima just said, to thank Tara and Dot and Annette for your willingness to serve. One of the great outcomes of this process so far is a lot of people have been asking really good questions about, what is the sort of the role of the trustees? What's the charter? What's the, where are the bylaws? What is this organization? And so it's been really helpful that just a couple weeks ago, just a week and a couple days ago, we finally gotten a good, helpful, written out opinion from town council about all this. To clarify, something we already knew, which is that since the library was sold to the town in '62, there hasn't been any formal organization for the trustees. There's no charter. There's no reference in the town bylaws. There's a lot of ambiguity here. And one of the things, and that, as best as we can tell, the library is functioning as a department of the town. The trustees are in charge of, advising providing advice about the library and about, and of course, this particularly important role in taking care of stewarding the money that's been donated to the library over the years. And I wonder about your interest or willingness to participate in a process where we actually, come up with a bylaw or a change to our charter or something that actually describes the role of the West Acton Citizens Library Trustees.
I think that would be a good idea, and it would be fun. Having worked with the federal government, I spent a lot of time involved with law, and it's something I'm comfortable with, and I'd be happy to help with.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Nothing else?
David.
Hi, David.
Hi, and thank you for being an applicant and for being here.
I guess showing up really is important, huh?
I really appreciated all the ideas that you mentioned in your opening statement about promoting the library. I think that's a great thing. You also talked in considerable detail about some programming ideas. I was wondering how you thought you would work with the other trustees and the library director to implement those ideas, because you put in a lot of detail. And so I was wondering how you thought that, you expected that to work, and what
having an idea but putting it into action would be probably somebody's responsibility above my pay grade, probably the librarian. I don't know. I mean, if the trustees agreed to one of my ideas, for example, I think it would be run by the librarian to see if they agreed with it. And if everybody agreed, then maybe it would happen, and we'd figure out how to make it happen. I don't know. It depends upon what it would be, how it would evolve in terms of the detail.
So I think that's an important distinction, and maybe the first thing that needs to be worked out in detail, to some of Jim's points, but maybe even before, as to how that relationship works. For example, for the select board, if one of us has a good idea, we don't go to the director in charge of that department, right? We work through the town manager to do that. I assume that would be true here too, and so you wouldn't go to the librarian, go to the library director and try to figure that out, which is why I asked that question.
So when you say, I guess, I don't know whether the person sitting at the desk at Citizens Library, is that person being called the director or the librarian?
That would be the branch librarian.
So the librarian, that's what I meant by the librarian, I guess.
So that's also exactly my point. If I have a great idea for the DPW director, I don't go to the DPW director and say we should do this, right? I chat with the town manager, right? And the same thing is true there. You wouldn't want to direct the branch manager in the library. You'd want to go to the library director.
Yeah. David, I worked for the federal government for a long time. I'm very aware of dealing with the appropriate hierarchy. I don't know what it is. I threw an off-the-cuff answer to you, but whatever the hierarchy is and the way to do it is how I would do it.
Right. I was just trying to figure out what your expectations
are.
No,
I don't have any expectation because I think it seems like everything is pretty new. So I would follow the channels that were appropriate to be done. Again, having worked for the federal government for a number of years, there's certain ways that things are done, and that's the way it is.
Okay,
I'm happy with that. I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No more questions for me.
Just quickly thank Annette. Thank you. I liked listening to your timeline.
Thank you.
And you live so close too.
I know. I spent a lot of time walking back and forth to that library.
Thank you. So I guess the key thing for me, once again, is that it's become very clear, and now we have a legal opinion from council about the exact structure of the library, that it is in a different category than, for instance, the Acton Memorial Library. So I think it's important to understand that it will be has been since 1962, a department of the town. In 62, it was actually set up as the West Acton branch of the Acton Memorial Library. So I think that it's very important to understand that although it has been somewhat independent in the past, I think the only way that it can move forward is to provide more services and to provide reliable staffing. And the only way that that's going to be able to happen, obviously, is with funding and with a close collaboration with the Memorial Library. So I think that's a take-home message that I would offer to you, is that we're not going to go back to pre-1962. I think it's important that we move ahead. What I've seen, and full disclosure, I did serve as a trustee of the West Acton Citizens Library for a couple of years. And so I think it's really important to understand that we're entering a new era for that building. And I'm 100% committed to keeping that building open and keeping library services going there.
Good.
But it's not going to look the same as it did before. And we've had a long series of really excellent library staff there, starting with Thelma Hermes, Susie Pomeroy, Reggie Tischler, Rosie, Jennifer Friedman. I mean, we've really had a wealth of really qualified people there, but that's going to change. All of those people were hobbled somewhat by the fact that there wasn't enough funding and there wasn't enough staff time there, so the library was never able to really blossom. And I hope that under whatever set of trustees and rules and regulations we come up with, we understand that it's going to be a much more viable and much more vibrant operation than it has been in the past.
That sounds exciting, Dean.
It's not really a question, but...
No, I think that sounds very exciting.
Yeah. So, since everyone on the boards has had a chance to ask questions, we'll open it to see if there's any comments from the public.
Should I sit down?
Yes. And it appears we have no questions from the public. All right. Therefore, I will close off the question and answer period. And we'll open for deliberations from the board. If any members of the board wishes to make any discussion points, this could include a nomination or not. We could just at the discussion period at this point, if anybody has any comments they'd like to make. Absolutely. We'll start with the trustees.
Okay. One of the things that I did want to mention that I think we need to take into consideration while we're making this decision is I think there was a communication breakdown at some point in the chain for coming to this meeting and that this was on the agenda. And so I am a little concerned that the other candidate may not have even known that it was today, because I didn't know until Dot had texted and emailed me and forwarded an email to me. So I don't think I would even be here today. So that is a concern that I wanted to bring up, because I think it's interesting that somebody would go through all of the work of writing the letter and then not show up or even respond or pull out as a candidate. So I don't know what the answer is for that, if the decision has to be made tonight or if it can be pushed to recircle with this candidate. I can't see the name right now, but I just wanted to put that out there, that I do know that there was some sort of communication breakdown, because I didn't see any formal notification for me to attend this meeting today.
Thank you.
Did someone try to text her? I was curious.
Okay.
Linda, the other candidate.
We didn't know until
We did notify all the candidates of the process that would happen tonight. I think we did that about a week ago. And as recently as an hour or so ago, we did, or within the last 20 minutes, we did try to contact the other candidate to see if she just missed the Zoom invite or what, and we haven't heard back.
Any other questions, comments, deliberation from any member of the combined boards?
I have a question. First of all, the two candidates that withdrew, that was news as of tonight, and that was disappointing, because I think it is good to have a pool of candidates and, thorough exchange of thoughts and things like that, and roles as a trustee. But if there are no other candidates, I'm not clear how that goes. Does that automatically mean the one candidate is nominated? You know what I mean? I'm just asking about town law.
Well, the way I would propose we proceed is first we see if we can, some member of the combined boards would have to make a nomination. And if nobody made a nomination, then we're at a deadlock. We would renew the process. If nomination was made for one candidate, we'd take a vote, and obviously it would have to be it's a roll call vote, and it would be the simple majority. So we could have a particular candidate that could get nominated but not get a majority of the vote, could vote A or nay or abstention. So that's the process, and we could hold this off, depending on how the vote is, we might end up having to reconsider the whole process, but that's the way I'd proceed tonight.
Yeah, and just as a clarification, I think per their charter, you have three, you have a maximum of 3 full members. So in this case, technically, if both of you were meeting, it would be considered a quorum. Am I right? So, okay, so you could continue making decisions as a citizens board of trustee, but it would require both of you to be present. So in that case, that could tide over until we maybe redo this process again to try to find a third trustee. But I think that as long as both of you are there, technically, like, you can still call meetings and still function as a committee.
And we have not hired a library manager for citizens. Is that correct? I don't even know if there are candidates.
So I would defer to the manager about,
Thank you. So we met with a few weeks ago, we presented the plan that we had implemented for the summer, because Jennifer Friedman retired at the very end of June, the first week of July, and since that time, the library has remained open. And we've actually increased the hours it's been open through the use of the Memorial Library staff. Several staff, I think a few key ones have been doing most of the work, but I think there's been a rotation of others to make sure that the building remained open to the community. That is, that was the summer plan, and the summer's over next week. So we have proceeded with recruiting for a full-time librarian. The process is still out, I believe. I think we're either still accepting applications or the period just closed. And once the interviews start, we would invite a member of the Citizens Library Trustees to participate in the process, as we discussed when we laid out the summer plan earlier this year. And so what that would do is provide a full-time person to work at that library, which we haven't had for a while.
Thank you.
any Any other comments from members of the board? Jim?
I'm aware that there's an election for Citizens Library trustees in May, right? At the regular town election, at town meeting. So given the relatively short period of time, I'm fine with nominating Annette Lockery to fill the gap between now and May. And then, and then hopefully one or more of these fine people who has put their names in, and then apparently, two have sort of explicitly stepped back, and one may or may not be interested, but hopefully that they would be interested in, putting their names out again in May, and then we can have an election and let the citizens choose. I think these kind of fill-in appointments are just that. They're to fill in a temporary gap. I'd move a nomination for Annette for filling the trustee role from now until
I would second.
Okay, we have a nomination. We only have one candidate. We will call the roll. If the clerk could call the roll and start with the members of the trustees.
Sure thing. Dot, do you vote aye, nay, or abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Tara?
Abstain.
Okay. I will vote aye.
I'll also vote aye.
Oh my God. Dean?
I will go with the trustees and abstain as well.
Okay. Fran?
I vote aye.
Okay, thank you. David?
I'll vote aye.
Okay, thank you. So that was abstain, aye, abstain, aye. Okay, so that passes then, I believe.
It does.
Or,
Thank you very much, Annette. It's sort of a grueling process you've gone through. And we hope to see good things continue to come from the West Acton Citizens Library. And thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
And Dot for all of your work on this as well.
Thank you so much.
And I think the library trustees need to close their portion of the meeting.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Thank you very much. All right, new business. Update on MBTA community compliance and the South Acton Action Plan. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. The governor's office just last week published their official guidance for how communities are to implement the new multifamily zoning requirements related to MBTA communities. And this is something that we have been working on since the whole thing started. If you recall, there was a presentation to this board in December, and we talked about it again in May, where we talked about where we thought the compliance guidelines were going to go and what we were doing to prepare for it happening. So we did submit a form to the state saying that we're working on it and we want to stay eligible. And with the new guidance that's come out, actually Kristen in the planning office actually applied for a grant through MAPC and received it to develop what we're calling a South Acton Action Plan. It's a technical assistance grant, and it's a robust public engagement process where we're looking to look at the 2020 master plan, look at this new guidance, and try to understand things that we can do from a planning and community zoning standpoint to help address these new guidelines. There's an advisory group made up of staff, members of the planning board, the Community Housing Corporation, Economic Development Committee, Historic District Commission, Transportation Advisory, DEIC, and I would ask the board to consider designated delegating or assigning a member to participate in these meetings. The first one is the 7th of September, and they will help develop the public engagement efforts that we'll be doing for that work. So there's a memo in the packet that goes into more detail about what I just highlighted, but the main ask of the board tonight is there a member that you'd like to have participate in that process, the internal meetings, and if there's any questions that you have about the new guidelines, if you've had a chance to review them.
Okay, questions from members of the board? We have anybody who'd like to volunteer to? Oh.
And unless anyone else, I'm happy to. I would enjoy it, actually. Oh, sorry. I would be happy to volunteer. Yeah.
Mr. Manager, you have your designee.
Thank you. And, you know, as the guidance just came out last week, we've been working with town council and, you know, our other colleagues to understand how exactly to apply it, and we'll keep the board and the community apprised as we continue that process.
One question?
Jim.
One thing that was mentioned there was a tool under development that would, sort of from a map point of view, would describe, you know, where these zones could be, where they couldn't be, what size they needed to be, specific to each town. And I'm just, I just want to make sure that is my understanding correct, that that's coming, and I'm certainly eager to see it when it's available.
Yes, so you know, there's only a subset of the state that is considered MBTA communities, and they actually reduced that by making a clarification about communities that have bus service only. And so, yes, they're going to be providing resources to each of us to help us navigate that, and I will share that cool map when we get access to it.
Okay. Anything further on that, John, or is that? Okay. Next, update on the American Rescue Plan Act, allocations and recommended process to update plan.
Thank you. So just to review the American Rescue Plan Act, funding allocated to the town of Acton, $7 million. 2.4 was a direct allocation to the municipality, and 4.5 or so was an allocation to us through the county. As of Friday, or actually as of last Wednesday, because I haven't checked since, we received all of the funding from our municipal allocation and 50% of the county reallocation, and we expect to get the rest soon. The school district also received a little bit of money through ESSER 3, which I didn't account for in that calculation. If you recall last year, probably around this time, we conducted a needs assessment, some stakeholder engagement, internal working group. We looked at our capital plan, we looked at the select board goals that were in place as of last year, and we brought to the board about $12 million worth of ideas for what we could spend the ARPA funds on. From there was a comment period for approximately a month. There was presentations to the select board, there's finance committee presentations. The board held a formal listening session to collect public input. There was a public survey. Then on October 4th, the board did a deliberation with some fancy spreadsheet work by the chair. And then on October 18th, it voted to approve the final recommended investment priorities. Since that time, we have been working, you know, at that meeting, $5.1 million was allocated in about 24 different initiatives, and about $2 million was held in reserve for future years. And so as of, some of the things that were invested in were some revenue replacement to fill shortfalls in local receipts. We did some investments in sustainability initiatives, water, wastewater, parks, playgrounds, facilities, some technology. Later in January, there's actually additional funding set aside for public housing reinvestment to make energy efficient improvements. $1 million was allocated to the regional school district. And since then, we had to work through the if you recall, the CARES funding, where we received around $2 million, was given to the state, and then the state administered how we used it. And that was sort of a complicated process. And we thought getting the money directly from the federal government would make it easier. And in some ways it did, but it also created a requirement that we follow some different procurement guidelines, which, we always follow the state guidelines. In this case, we have to specifically follow the federal ones, which in some cases is a little bit different for us. So we developed an internal process to make sure that each of the departments, and in some cases the private entities and the districts that are using the funds, are all following the appropriate procurement guidelines. And so as of today or recently, of the $3.7 million that was allocated in FY22, about $2.34 million of that has been encumbered, either spent already or POs have been pulled to spend the money. And so there's about a $1.3 million that had been allocated in FY22 that hasn't been encumbered yet. And that's not because the projects have fallen off, it's just because they're either still in the planning phase, there's some procurement things that we're going back and revisiting. Very few of those efforts are over. And we still have to sort out a few of them. So we also have funding that we allocated in FY23, which is about $1.4 million, and those projects are just getting started. We're just getting started with a pretty cool program to provide grants to businesses to do energy efficiency improvements. We're starting the child care subsidies for students or families with children in schools or daycare, and we're starting to do a lot of those things. But there still is approximately $2 million that the board had held in reserve. And so what I'd recommend that the board do is that, it just did another goal setting last month or recently, and so some goals and priorities have been shifted and new ones have been added. And there's been some needs that emerged over the last year, and ARPA was suggested as a way to address those. And so I think what I'd recommend that the board do is to take another month or so and formally start the process of revisiting the plan, and either start that tonight or start that at the next meeting, and then plan to take a vote again at an October meeting, probably the first October meeting, with an update and a new investment plan. And in the meantime, we can do very similar things that we did last time. We could submit a public notice saying that we're doing this. We could talk to the stakeholders again. We could check in with the Finance Committee and the school district and the water district and everyone else, and come back and let the board know exactly where we are and make recommendations about how to invest. I really think that the board should invest the rest of the funding. We have a few years to spend it, but I think the longer that we wait to decide what to spend it on, the longer it takes. And I think it's in our interest to lay out the rest of the funding over the next 2 years. Actually, the next 3 years. FY23, any changes that we want to make to the current year, FY24 and FY25. And, we can look at our capital plan, that we already have, and the capital plan that we'll be working on. And just, I think it makes sense to make those decisions this fall before we start the budget process, because I think it helps to have our ARPA plan established at that point so that we can do the rest of the town's finances going forward. So that's my update, and my recommendation is to hold a comment period and take a vote in October on a new plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good path forward. I do think we need to solicit some input from stakeholders. I'm particularly concerned, looking at water and wastewater issues. Personally, I would only be in favor of what I would call one-time expenses. I would not want to go out and hire a bunch of new help with this money and then say, okay, well, 18 months down the road, you're going to have to appropriate money to keep those people on staff. So I'd be looking at sort of one-shot kind of projects. Personally, I don't want to handcuff the town into making long-term personnel costs or other costs that, that could bind us, could be a real problem when we're looking at, we're hitting the limit on 2.5 before too long. So certainly, I would go for those capital expenses and for projects that can be easily accomplished and one and done sorts of things. Comments from other members of the board? David.
So I was just wondering how we were going to, what the process was going to be, right? So last time we asked for suggestions, produced a list out of the suggestions, got feedback on the suggestions, both from the public and from committees like FinCom. And then we came back and voted on the selections. Are we going to do the same thing or something different? Or, I'm just wondering how this is going to work. I mean, that kind of process that we did last time was a number of meetings, right? Including, getting comments from the public, so.
It did take a number of meetings, and we had made a commitment to making it a public process for the first pass-through. I think looking at the time constraints, I would not be opposed to abbreviating it a bit. I do think we should allow some time for public comments, maybe a whole full-blown process that we did before, but I could be swayed on that. David.
So just specifically, how do we produce the list? Are we going to, ask the town manager to draft a list, or are we going to, so last time for example, the school district made a request, the water district made a request, a couple of private entities made a request. Are we going to ask people to do that? So last year it was a merge of a few requests like that, and then some needs that were identified by the town manager. And then we took feedback on the whole thing. Again, I'm just wondering, I'm trying to argue, one side, I'm just trying to figure out exactly how it's going to work.
I would think that I would be very interested in getting input from the public entities, the town manager, the school superintendent, and the water district commissioners. I think between those three entities, we can easily find a way to commit $2 million.
You don't have to ask.
Any one of the three could eat up the $2 million. So I think my thought was that at the end of tonight, we asked the town manager to come up with a list, have him work. And I'm looking, because I think it's been very well documented, I'm looking specifically at the capital improvement plan as where we could come up with a list of things. We have certainly identified some new needs recently that some were in the capital plan, some weren't. Certainly want to articulate some issues with things like a good project moving ahead would be the public works facility, the fuel storage tanks, which I think we have a potential issue there, potential liability, and I don't think we were as aware of that when we went through this the last time. So I would just go to those three entities and ask for a list and come back to us. Certainly anything that we decide to do is subject to public comment. Maybe have a list back by our first meeting in September and plan on doing a vote on our second meeting in September. David?
Yes, that sounds good. And so just to, again, sorry, one point of clarification. We'd ask the town manager to reach out to those public entities,
Yes.
add those to his list, and he would put in capital items that he thought were strong needs. And then that would be the list we'd get in September, get some public comment. After that list is out, the FinCom can weigh in if they would like. And then we come back with second meeting in September, maybe the first in October, whatever it makes sense, and vote on them.
Yep.
Great, thank you so much.
Laid it out very well, thank you. Questions, comments from other members of the board? Imogen?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good plan, and I think the good thing is we don't have to reinvent the wheel, so even just thinking about the process we went through last year, we had a lot on our wish list. Some of them were accomplishable, some of them exceeded what we had been given, and we had some aside, and so I think that luckily we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and so I do think that looking through those requests and looking through those items that we hadn't addressed yet, adding in this new feedback that we get from different committees, I think would produce a robust list that we can then kind of go through and allocate the rest of the money.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this plan, with the caveat that if either the water district or the schools decide they need to go through, a board meeting to review this, then first meeting in September might be too soon. But if they're ready on a staff level to proceed because they feel like they've gotten enough feedback from their boards already, then let's go ahead with the double September schedule. But if not, I'm open to extending this into the first meeting in October if we need more time to get the input from the other public bodies.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Manager, does that sound like a plan for you?
Yes, thank you.
All right, moving along. We got to the consent items. Item 7, approved meeting minutes, August 8th, 2022. Item 8, approved draft charge of the committee to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the commencement of the American Revolution.
I'd like to hold that.
Okay. Accept easement, 180 Newtown Road. Accept gift, Economic Development Office for $1,000 from Phillips 66 to support production costs for the 2022 Kelly's Corner Block Party. Item 11, accept gift, Economic Development Office for $100 from Q Cleaners to support production costs for the 2022 Kelly's Corner Block Party. Item 12, accept gift, Economic Development Office for $500 from RF's Woodworking to support production costs for the 2022 Kelly's Corner Block Party. Item 13, accept gift, Economic Development Office for $2,500 from Roach Brothers to support production costs for the 2022 Kelly's Corner Block Party. Item 14, accept gift, Economic Development Office for $250 from Squash West to support production costs for the 2022 Kelly's Corner Block Party. Item 15, accept gift, Economic Development Office for $250 from X-Golf to support production costs for the 2022 Kelly's Corner Block Party. Item 16, approve one-day alcoholic beverage license, Vicky Tidman, Narrow Park Sports Pavilion, September 17th, 2022. Item 17, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Acton Democratic Town Committee, Narrow Park, September 18th, 2022. Item 18, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Ironwork Farm, 5 High Street, October 1st, 2022. Item 19, request for one-day alcoholic beverage license fee waiver, Ironwork Farm. Item 20, committee appointment, Thomas Wolf, associate to full member, Land Stewardship Committee, to fill unexpired term of Lawrence Ullman, June 30th, 2024. Item 21, approve letter to Department of Energy Resources, DOER, Commission regarding fossil fuel ban pilot program. Item 22, accept gift planning division for $49,542 from DC Bean and Associates Construction Company towards the sidewalk fund as stated in the Select Board decision number 0407-2022-485. I will accept a motion to approve item 7 and items 9 through 22 inclusive.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? David, to your hold.
Thank you. I have one big issue and then a couple of little issues that I'd like to discuss with the charge. The big issue is, at our previous meeting, when we were discussing the 250th committee and during resident concerns, people spoke against things like the 1619 project and using critical race theory in our schools, which is odd since we don't use critical race theory in our schools. I was taken aback. We were discussing how to celebrate Acton's part in the revolution, and these people took it as an opportunity to diss Black people. In addition, multiple people spoke out about making sure that the focus is only on April 19th. And they said this again and again, which is, to me, was a backhanded way of making this exclusionary. One person was very explicit, saying he didn't want the process to be hijacked by people who are anti-American and only wanted people who love America. This kind of judgment as to who is a proper American and not must not play a part of this in this committee. I'd like to make 2 points here. One is, I know people of color in the town who avoid some town events because they don't know if they'll be welcome because of attitudes like this, frankly. And second, immigrants, especially those that later become citizens, come here to be Americans. It's upsetting to think that we might reject them when they're trying to be part of us. I've been excited about this committee. I like revolutionary history. I read books on the subject. I've been to the Old North Bridge more times than I can count. Coincidentally, I was just there 2 days before our last discussion, showing it off to some out-of-town friends. We took a tour of the old manse, which is next door, and I actually learned a few things, even though, again, I can't count the number of times that I've been there. To make sure that we avoid tendencies to make this committee exclusionary, I propose that we add the sentence, all events must be designed to involve and must have outreach to all the residents of Acton. And I have 2 little issues. I don't know how you want to structure this, Mr. Chair, whether you want me to say all my things or whether you want to discuss this first or.
Well, let's resolve the first one, your first point. Certainly, I think your statement, your addition, I think fits within the spirit of what I had planned here, and I would have no objection to adding that in. I think Lisa has the original of my document, and I think if you just give her the changes, I would have no objection to that. I don't know if other members of the board feel differently.
No, I think I agree, but maybe you could say it again so I could hear it.
So I'm proposing that we add the following sentence. I think there's a place in the middle of the large paragraph, but it could probably go anywhere. All events must be designed to involve and must have outreach to all residents of Acton.
Thanks. I got no problem with that.
Okay. To your other points.
So 2 minor things, and both kind of financial and both maybe a little technical. You say in the draft charge that the committee can propose putting things through the town budget process or into town meeting. Do we need to explicitly say that they can apply to the CPA, or is that implicit?
I would think that would be implicit and would, obviously, that would only apply for permanent remembrances, statuary restoration, that sort of thing. I don't think you could do programming with it.
I agree with that, but there could easily be a plaque.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's totally appropriate.
And so you don't think we need to mention that here? Okay.
I'd be happy to add it, but I'm not sure it's necessary.
And the other thing is whether we need to say that this effort can accept gifts and grants, or whether that's also implicitly allowed. I didn't know whether that was implicit. I mean, someone could easily want to donate $500 or $1,000 to this, to the events.
I think any gifts or grants would end up being accepted by the select board, and then we could allocate it. So I'm not sure that wording is needed, but I have no objection to it.
So when we do this, in other cases, don't they go to a town department, right? I'm just, again, it's out of ignorance. And for example, a lot of gifts are given to the recreation department for particular purposes, doing something at NARA or an event or whatever.
Mr. Manager, your recommendation.
Yeah, so we could, through accounting, establish a gift account for the celebration if we anticipate that there'll be a lot of donations to help fund it. And that should take care of that. And the select board could accept donations to that without having it necessarily be in the charge.
Okay, thank you. David?
So that sounds fine. It sounds like my last two details don't need to be in the charge.
Okay, and while we're at it, I discovered that I got nailed by spell check. So let's see if I can find the charge. I made note in the charge that one of the members should be my intent was designated professional educator, and it came out as designed. So that's the other change that I would offer. So David.
I move that we accept the draft charge with the addition of the sentence, all events must be designed to involve and must have outreach to reach all residents of Acton.
We've got a motion.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Jim.
Just wanted to appreciate, Dean, looking at the old version and the new version, I think you did listen to a number of the points from the people that spoke, and you did that in a way that didn't move us away from the kind of inclusive event we want, but still paid attention to those concerns. I appreciated that you had a tricky balance to play, and just thanks for traveling through that particular path.
Thank you.
Can I also say something?
Imogen.
Yeah, actually, echoing Jim, thank you for accepting comments from us and the public. I thought that the charge was well balanced, and I think that hopefully we can get some Native American history representation, and I'm glad that was put in there as well, and kept in there. So yeah, I think that's good, and I also appreciated the breakdown of where the 11 members could come from, and the different committees and organizations that could be a part of it. So I thought it looked good.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? All right. David.
Can you just ask one more question? When will we choose a liaison to this committee?
I would propose it at probably the next meeting. And I would also like to work with the town manager's staff to publicize that we'll be looking for members of the public and get that out on the website. I would hope to see some work starting to get done on this probably in September as people get back from vacation. It seems like a long time away until you try to plan these things. So,
Thank you.
thank you. I think I am looking for one more motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Very productive session. Have a good night.